Hey, welcome back or welcome to the Nut House. Either way, let's talk about chainsaw basics. What do we see the most in the shop when it comes to chainsaws? And it goes right from how you store them to how you maintain them. So let's you and I discuss some of the things that we should know when it comes to owning, storing, operating your chainsaw. Now, some of the things that I'm going to try to cover here are like, the bar oils that you use, the 50 to 1 mix, so forth. And so let's start at the very beginning, and that is you bought your chainsaw. Now, if it's your very first chainsaw, I hope someone at the dealership explained to you how to use it. If they didn't, you need to read the owner's manual. And I would feel more comfortable with you starting out to start out with someone that has experience using a chainsaw, if at all possible. A lot of people get hurt with a chainsaw because they are doing things that they shouldn't be doing and that the chainsaw wasn't made to do. And the worst thing you can do is try to cut above your head. My main rule of thumb is from down below the chest to the ground. Nothing higher than that. And why is that? Well, it's because the saw can kick. You've got less strength up here than you do when you have it out in front of you. And you have to treat that saw with respect. I mean, that saw will hurt you and will hurt the people around you. So that would be the second thing, is making sure that you're operating it safely, but you're also operating it safely when other people are around. Whether it's you're falling trees or blocking up on landing, or you got a load of logs and you're cutting it up, or you've got a couple of small trees that you're trying to prune in the yard. Now, if you're looking at trees where you got to get up here like this, they have what they call pruning saws, and they're like a weed eater, but they got a little chainsaw tip on the end. Use that. Don't be up there with a chainsaw, especially on ladders and everything else. You are just asking for it. So the next question is, what kind of bar oil should I use? And that depends a lot on what time of year it is and where you're at. There's 3 styles of bar oil, but there's a lot of different makes, the companies that make it. And the big thing is viscosity. You don't want like car oil and a chainsaw in the summertime because it's just going to run right through the system. And it's not going to keep the chain lubricated enough to where she's getting hot. Now, in some areas, you're not allowed to use the normal bar oil that you and I would use. You would have to use something that, was good for the environment, biodegradable. A lot of loggers now in the Adirondack Park that are working up there have to run the biodegradable oil. And that's all about like pollution and oil being dumped in the Adirondacks. But for most of us, we just go to either Tractor Supply, Walmart, or your local chainsaw dealer and buy their bar oil. So now you have the winter blend and you have the summer blend. What's the difference? Well, it would be viscosity. You want a higher viscosity in the summertime, a thicker oil, so it remains on the chain and bar longer. And then in the wintertime, if you try running the summer blend, it would be in the colder weather that oil will get thicker. And now you're not getting enough bar oil on the chain and bar. I mean, does that make sense? So you want to run the summer blend up until you get to temperatures down below 20-25 degrees. And then you want to switch over to what they call the winter blend, which is closer to your car or motor oil than what you would run in the summertime. I hear this time and time again. My chainsaw is leaking oil. And what I can tell you is, in general, a drop of oil makes a big spot. And when you're running your chainsaw, all right, and you're rubbing it along, not all the bar oil is going to stay on the chain and bar. It's going to come back through around the sprocket. And if you have any crud built up underneath your covers and stuff around your sprocket, that will become saturated. So if you set it down after you've done using it, and you come back a couple of days later and you see this pile of oil, it's just what is remaining off from the sprocket, from the chain and bar from your last use. They will leak. I guarantee it. I have not seen a saw yet that does not leak bar oil after you set it down from using it. Now, what I have seen, and this goes to storage, is a lot of folks are buying the case that they put the chainsaw in. You have the shroud that goes on it. You set it in there, you put the cover, and you button it up, and you put it on the shelf in the garage. And then fall comes, and it's time to use it. You take it down, and the whole bottom is covered with oil. And what happens, especially if I've seen it happen in a couple hours of sitting on the back of somebody's truck in the hot air or the hot temperatures and sunlight, and it's in a black case, and the case gets so hot that it takes the oil and thins it right down to such a thin state that it just runs right out of the saw. To avoid those things, it's either, if you're going to have it put on the shelf somewhere and you're going to have it in a case all summer long, and your garage is not temperature set where if it stays the same temperature in there, I would suggest either dumping the bar oil out before you even put it in that case for storage, or deal with just a bunch of oil that's in the case. So when it comes to bar oil for the normal homeowner, you have the summer and winter blend. Summer, heavier viscosity, winter, less viscosity. All right. One of the biggest things we also see in here is the chain not getting enough oil. And most often the case is either the oil pump is going bad, or more apt to, you're not cleaning the oil area where you put the oil in enough. And what's happening is you're dumping new bar oil in. You're picking up pieces of sawdust that's around that, and it's worse on the steels. I can tell you right now. Husqvarna. See, now the steels are even worse. You see how the caps, where you can get all that grit and stuff with this style? You want to clean these off every time before you pour oil in. If not, you're going to end up with some of this sawdust getting stuck in your oiler, and then you're going to be complaining that you're not getting enough bar oil on the chain. Husqvarnas aren't that bad, but steels, especially with the cap style, the 170s, 180s, 210s, you will get gump into that oil reserve unless you keep it clean. And I carry it's a small paintbrush, but the bristles are heavy, so you can really get between the nooks and crannies. And I clean around that whole cap area before I open the cap. Because I know if I don't, if you don't, you're going to come see a guy like me because your chainsaw is not oiling correctly. It's getting hot and there's not enough oil on the chain. Easiest way to cure that is keep it clean. What we've done here at the shop is, and I'll show you in the video on Husqvarna of where we're revving it up to show you to make sure the oil is coming out. A lot of times here in the shop we can pop the chain off, take a shot of air and blow it back through the tube and then dump the oil out, put fresh in, and you're off and going again. So when you do that with your saw, you can take the chain and bar right off and just rev her up. And if you don't see any oil coming out, then you either have a plugged system or your oiler's going bad. Either way, it's not good for your system and trying to cut firewood. It will not work. So if it's not coming out, you can simply take, if you have an air compressor with a air gun, just blow back into it and then try it again to see if it picks up. If not, then you're either going to have to replace the oil pump on that or take it to a shop and have somebody else do it for you, whatever you feel more comfortable with. One thing I cannot stress to you enough is to wear the proper safety gear. You need eye protection. You need ear protection. Chaps. So if the saw does nick, it's not going to cut you. Steel-toed boots. I like a shield. It doesn't need to be plastic. It could be the mesh style. Just to keep stuff from coming up and hitting you in the face. But that's a must. You need to have the proper safety gear and know how to use it. You know, a lot of times the customers will come to me and they'll tell me that the chain is dull or something because they're not having any luck trying to cut. It's just not cutting at all. And half the time, this happens a lot, half the time when I take a look at the saw, the chain's on backwards. There's no way it's going to cut if the chain is going the wrong direction. So you want to make sure that the chain is on the way it should be so that it can cut. As you can see, it's morning here. I ran out of time yesterday working on it. We had other things we had to get done. So making sure that the chain is going in the correct direction so that it can cut is a must. Now, when it comes to your fuel, I recommend the premium non-ethanol. And I do the mix myself. I do a 50-to-1, but check with the manufacturer what they want for their particular saw. Steels are 50 to 1. And what I recommend and what I use is the synthetic versus just the regular. And the other thing that you want to stay away from is some guys, will have, let's say, a boat and they have oil injection systems on it. I don't recommend that you use the oil injection mix, that comes in the big marine grade. Go with a synthetic. Don't mix up a lot ahead of time. And when I say a lot, I mean something that you're going to use up for the next day or two. If there's going to be a bunch of you cutting up firewood and stuff, then mixing up a couple gallons is fine. But for the most part, the tendency is they mix the 2.5 gallons up, and then they only use maybe a half gallon, and that sits over a period of time. And it's not the same strength, it's not the same quality fuel that it was when you first got it. You can also buy, the premix in a can. And that's already pre-mixed for you. All you gotta do is just dump it in, use it. Convenient, yes. I think price a little bit high. And I don't think that personally, I don't think the saw runs as good with it as you do fresh premix or fresh mix that you do. Then to consider, that if you don't want to monkey with trying to figure out how to measure up so much fuel in advance and this and that, if you get it in the can, you can just use it as you need it. And I'll give examples right here. All right. Now, there's numerous different types that are out there. You can get it at Walmart, Tractor Supply, your auto parts store, any of your dealers. We carry different brands here. We have the Stens, and then we have the rotary. We have the regular, and then we have the synthetic. I'm just telling you what I use. Synthetic is a little bit more, but I know my saws are getting that extra little bit of lubrication, and they will last longer. I always say, look at somebody that's professionally doing it and see what he's using or she's using, and you may want to think about using that yourself. So on that note, you guys got to be safe, have the correct bar oil depending on the seasons, and I would go with a synthetic over the regular 50 to 1 mix using premium fuel, non-ethanol. All right, catch you on the next video.